The following screenshot, which I used in the previous video, is from an actual study made in 2015 by the American strategy think tank Stratfor. They made a list of predictions for 2025. The main prediction was that Russia would be broken up and not exist anymore, and that China would become weak. Well, it seems it was mostly wishful thinking on their part. Now even the globalist rag The Economist is talking about stalemate in the Ukraine, and they are not talking about Taiwan lately. And really, the best way to interpret such predictions is that they are not really predictions, but intentions, what they want to do. Most of these predictions from 2015, which were almost all wrong, were based on George Friedman's 2009 book, The Next 100 Years. I'm not sure if he's related to New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman, but he seems to have a very similar globalist view. In 1997, before even 9/11 happened, another think tank called the Project for a New American Century reared its ugly head. Among its leaders, we had Robert Kagan, the husband of cookie baker Victoria Nuland, then Paul Wolfowitz and Donald Rumsfeld. From the start, they were very clear they were pushing for war in Iraq and many other countries. And they got their wish after 9/11. You may remember this old video.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years. Starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
20 years later, it doesn't look so good for the US. Destroying Iraq just made Iran stronger. Destroying Libya caused chaos in the region and in Europe too with the refugees. They failed to remove Assad in Syria, they had to cut and run in Afghanistan, and now they seem to be losing in the Ukraine too. Now there's a new war in Gaza, but it doesn't look like it's helping the American image as a promoter of democracy, of human rights either. The other day, American bases in Turkey were attacked by protesters. Even in Europe, there are now some timid calls to remove American bases from there. Some people talk about the end of the American empire. Well, perhaps it's still premature to say that. America still has a lot of power. But it could be the beginning of the end. Seeing all the carnage that took place from the early 20th century until now, I guess it can't come soon enough.